I'm Donna Polk.
And I'm Jonathan Stokes.
And this is Now We Know,
the monthly Black History podcast where we discover what we didn't and uncover what we needed to learn.
We're here to broaden our understanding and grow together, one topic at a time.
We didn't before,
but now we know.
I've been playing PS5 and I got the PlayStation Network thing so that I could play with strangers online. And so far haven't been called any racial slurs, but I feel it coming. And it's just super interesting. What an interesting world that people are so deeply steeped in, this gaming thing.
Yeah.
It is not my home. It is not my territory, and I'm stepping on it, damn it.
But you're enjoying it a little bit, at least.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it a lot of it because that means that I get to stay in the air conditioning and turn my brain off. And it's almost meditative how, it's nice to do like a useless task that's still enjoyable. And I think I'm understanding gaming a little more because there's a little bit of self-satisfaction as you go to each checkpoint. I earned this, I did this. And it's like, okay, it's about as meaningful as when I actually do a home workout. It's like, I know nothing's going to happen, but it feels good that I did it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I lost my voice from being debaucherous and gay over the weekend. Happy Pride.
I was going to say, you sound a little raspy.
Yeah, we're a little raspy, but it's okay. Because we did just watch a really great documentary. Did you end up getting to finish the whole thing, or?
I did, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, I finished the whole thing. I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was a powerful documentary,
Yeah.
I felt like the grit, the determination, my boss calls me this or says I have this, the tenacity. It was really prevalent, powerfully prevalent in the people of Lowndes County. Lowndes County. I have a hard time saying it.
Me too. I just started saying Lowndes because some people were just saying that. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we don't know how to pronounce things here. We are now, it's not NPR.
Right.
But yeah, just to give a brief description and background on Lowndes County. There's a documentary that we watched for the preparation of this episode called Lowndes County and the Road to Black Power. This is based on the passing of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which represented not the culmination of the civil rights movement, but the beginning of a new crucial chapter. Nowhere was this next battle better epitomized than in Lowndes County, Alabama, a rural, impoverished town with a vicious history of racist terrorism. In a town that was 80% Black but had zero Black voters, laws were just paper without power. This isn't a story of hope, but of action. Through first-person accounts and searing archival footage, Lowndes County and the Road to Black Power tells a story of the local movement, and Young Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC, organizers who fought not just for voting rights, but for Black power in Lowndes County. What did you think about the documentary?
First of all, it's really well produced. The story is clear. The information is delivered in such a visceral way. Searing footage is the right word. It is not far away enough from where we are right now for it to feel oftentimes how historical documentaries feel, a little imaginary, a little bit like this is just this is ancient history. This is not. This was 1965 when we begin at least the actions that are happening in Alabama. And it was heartbreaking and super inspirational. I think I left with more inspiration than I felt pain. Of course, it's hard to watch and hard to hear the actual stories. And I mean, of all the stories of violence against Black people, it's never been so plain for me, at least in media. These are people who watch people get shot because
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to either vote or support people who want to vote. And just wow, I'm still thinking, I'm like still in it. um
Yeah.
it was
There's a
really
lot to
really well done.
process.
Yes, so much to process. How did you
Yeah.
feel about the documentary as, the artwork?
I felt like it was really well done also. I mean, it starts off with this graphic footage of what were peaceful protests about the right to vote to people being trampled by police officers, and there's stretchers, and there's just it's chaos, right? I mean, they're gassed, they're tortured. It just was like really setting the tone of getting to understand the the scene of this place of Lowndes County. And part of the things that resonated with me of the contributors um, to the story, to the documentary, and the perspective. So you have literally people who grew up in Lowndes County. You have people who became part of SNCC. Again, that's the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. To these white women who were like, it was a really peaceful place. And we had a great time. And it was, it's like, what a
Different
world.
realities.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It was so powerful to be like, everyone's reality is true, sure, but like the ignorance or the, willing non-participation in educating themselves on what was really happening to people until it was thrown in their face. Um, and that was such a stark difference to me.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can't really explain it or really like emphasize how just varying they were, like a complete 180 from each other. Uh,
Yeah.
it was wild.
Well, to that point, I think this is a poignant documentary, especially as protests are every day right now. And so to to that point of living in different realities when we're all right next door, um, something that brought up for me is how embarrassing it is for me to not walk in other people's shoes. And I do have this idea that my experience is the experience. I think it's human nature, of course, but when you think about how other people navigate the world, it's embarrassing to think of how self-centered one can be. For instance, I was at a bachelor party not long ago, and a friend of mine who is like 36 has rheumatoid arthritis that has been really hitting them hard. And they came out, they dressed up and all that stuff. But as we were navigating this bar scene, I was just realizing, wow, if I weren't here for you to hold on to, this you would not be able to be here. And that is something I would have never thought of, and
Mm-hmm.
so those little moments of, okay, wow, this is just how you this is how you exist, and this is how the world welcomes you or doesn't welcome you. I understand it's shameful. It's
Mm-hmm.
shameful, and it sucks. And I'm grateful for social media, for the availability of other people's stories now, because those ladies, like you said, they were going about their day. The black
Yeah.
people right next door were actively being shot at because they wanted to
Yeah.
vote.
Right. I mean, you had a lot of these people who had to start working, at very young ages. They're three,
Yeah.
4 or 5 years old, working in cotton fields. And
Mhm.
to paint a bit more of the picture, sure, the enslavement period was over, but this was the era of sharecropping, right? So that's
Mhm.
the sort of continuation under disguise of the enslavement period. And um, so a lot of the people that we saw, that's part of their family story, were being sharecroppers, and so they're having to pick cotton on the land. So they pick for themselves, they pick for the landowners, and really having to, I guess, I don't know, I want to say earn your keep, and I feel like there's probably going to be a history of earn your keep being a bad saying, or that we're not supposed to be saying that.
Mhm.
But that was their reality. So at the time, these white ladies were saying, "Oh, I grew up with Black people, And I feel like that was the like 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s time and before that of saying, oh, well, I have Black friends. And it's like, but do you? Like,
Right.
do you see
Right.
them? Do you understand them? Do you, understand what they're going through or what they have gone through, and what their life experience is? And no, they didn't. Um, they couldn't have known.
They again, they didn't have to know. They got that
Yeah.
luxury of moving on throughout their life.
Hmm.
Um, it's also to the point, to the documentary's credit, um, it's mostly firsthand accounts, which I think
Hmm.
also puts the stories into a perspective that we often miss when we're talking
Hmm.
about even recent history. You know, it's not a report. These are just retellings. These are people who lived and saw it and know these people like Stokely Carmichael or
Hmm.
John Hewlett, um, all these different people who were members of SNCC, who were members of the Black Panther Party. Um, they were there and they are here and they were able to tell their story. And I just think they did such a good job of making it real. I remember growing up, I'm sure we talked about this on the show before, but I remember growing up and even me as a kid, I'm going to say second grade, third grade maybe, I understood the Black Panther Party to be a violent situation. I
Hmm.
understood it to be they have guns. They, you know, they are going to, they just want to, it's Black power and it's scary. And I'm Black, you know, and
Hmm.
I'm simultaneously at home listening to James Brown, I'm Black and I'm proud and all the things. But because of the way that it was spoken about in all these white institutions, the story was skewed, and I'm glad that
Hmm.
I was able to quickly realize that wasn't the case. But not everybody was able to. So shout out to Peacock and shout out to the makers of this documentary. I'm hoping that this isn't new information for people, but it humanizes people in a way that I really appreciate and don't see often enough.
Hmm. We can talk about what brought them to adapting the Black Panther as their sort of logo or their sort of mascot in Lowndes County. But the biggest crux of the issue here is that you've got a town of 80% Black people, and literally not a single person is registered to vote. There were 5,122 people, Black people, who were eligible, but none of them were registered. And then talking about like the blockage of being able to register to vote, or even the consideration of doing so, and what white people would do to Black people in Lowndes County. Namely, they mentioned how someone would want to register to vote, and then all of a sudden they had to pay the entirety of their car note, or something was going to be up for
Mm,
grabs because of that, because that's how much they didn't want people to vote. They knew, I mean, if you have 80% of a town being Black and not a single person's registered to vote, all of the laws and rules and regulations are in favor of those in power, although they were not the majority. And so I think the really the basis of this documentary is talking about white people having to grapple with their whiteness, and
yeah.
how they othered Black people, and didn't want them to come into power, because to them that meant that there's less power for them, and that they had to get out of their comfies and have to feel uncomfortable with not just who they are, but the life that they were living. I think it's one of those things where people are comfortable so long as they're not oppressed, or they're not, experiencing those sorts of atrocities, and allowing Black people to vote, especially in a county, or an area that is majority Black. That means that they're going to, quote, have to give up something, or maybe they
Mhm.
thought that they were going to then have to be treated in the same way that Black people were. And then, like, what a thought. You want to oppress someone so bad because you don't want retaliation, when really what they were looking for is just some amount of representation and rights to vote and to live, and to um have some freedom, like have true freedom, um that they didn't get
And
to experience.
we are still in that thought right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah.
It comes out in so many different ways in these culture war commentaries, where people are assuming that the people who are asking for rights, just regular human rights, up to and including white women, right,
Mm-hmm.
will then rise up and do what has been done to them, to
Yeah.
those who were in power. What an interesting place to immediately go to. What an
Yes.
interesting place to immediately go to think that other people think that way
Mm-hmm.
is wild. To think that people who have been harmed would want to also harm is such an interesting way to think. This is related, but not. But there's a local news, I'll call it a blog. There's a local reporting situation. I used to love them. A Black-owned news source for St. Louis. Local news is super important to me, and they're called Voice of the People. Something happened where they started going viral, and now they've changed completely into, the Joe Budden space. And so yesterday they posted during Pride Month, mind you, um, about Alamo Draft House, because Alamo Draft House has unisex bathrooms. And the
Mm.
post was unisex bathrooms with like a huff and puff emoji face. What are your thoughts? And all of the comments, most of the comments, and I don't know if this is algorithm, were like, just go pee. They're incredibly clean. Who cares? And I loved to see that. And they were really trying to get a rise up out of people. But then one of the comments in there said, it encourages rape.
Well,
And my first thought was, that was your first thought?
yeah.
That going into the bathroom with somebody is where you would assault somebody? Why is your mind going there?
Yeah.
That's, I have, that's wild. It's wild. Anyway, to back to the documentary.
Wait, hold on. On that note,
Yeah,
and this is a tangent, do you ever wonder if the comments that you see are the same comments that other people see? Is the algorithm in the comment section?
I have a feeling that it's in the comment section. Um,
I
yeah,
think so too, because like I'll send someone or they'll send me like a video and say it's the comments for me or something, and I'm just like, I don't understand any comments, right? Like
yeah.
they're not like hitting. And then at that moment I was like, are their comments different than the comments that I'm seeing?
I don't know.
Like all
I
the comments are
maybe.
there, but what's going to be at the top unless they're pinned?
Right. And also, it is true that it is algorithm, because now on Instagram, you do see people that you follow or people that would matter to
Yeah.
you in your sphere highlighted. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it all works out, but yeah, I do think it's confirmation bias stuff. So,
Hmm.
but I'm also happy to not see anti-trans commentary.
Yeah,
I
that's fair.
unfollowed them after that post. It's like, what are
Yeah.
you doing?
Yeah. On the note of white people grappling with their whiteness and trying to maintain power and everything, I'll send it to you or just send it to you, and we'll post it in the show notes as well. But there's this video on TikTok of this woman who's really, the handle is the underscore YV underscore edit. The question or the comment that she's replying to is how white women hover around this black woman in groups and they're so curious about her. What she notices that their plastics that what she notices their plastic smiles. There's no joy in their eyes. And she's living in the South. And so this lady, she really just kind of breaks down the sort of discomfort that white people are living in because they want to maintain their power. So maintaining their power means keeping things the same, don't do anything different. She even breaks it down to like seasoning their food and like, nope, don't do that because that's going to be representative of, something different, something. And it was wild. I think it's about like an 8-minute video. But it is quite interesting and really, I felt like similar to the white women that we saw in the documentary talking about their growing up experience and everything, and
Mhm.
how everything was hunky dory and when it wasn't. The turning point for one of the ladies is that there was a black man walking down the street and he waved down the car. She didn't think anything of it, but someone else in the car was like really up in arms about it. Later that night, he was killed. So she finds out that oftentimes this person, and I apologize, I don't have his name. I don't know that they mentioned his name.
I don't think
Um,
we got a name.
yeah, but he would be given a ride if he waved down a car, and the car was similar to the car that they were in. And so it's just a tragedy that, he had been working in the area, living in the area, and he could get a ride normally. But this call for a ride, which was just innocent enough, is just what he normally do, would then wind up in, the end of his life. It came to be that Lowndes County had this sort of, I don't know, nickname or reputation, and they called it Bloody Lowndes because a lot of Black people would come up missing. And there were a lot of lynchings in the area for this sort of reason or less or whatever. It just it
Like for
just
anything.
because for no real reason at all. And it's wild to consider a time that it's like that, just to exist as we want to or as we do, and someone to take your life for that is just, it's beyond.
This is why and like I want to be way more optimistic about the direction our country is headed in, of
Hmm.
course. But this is why the dog whistles stand out so much right now for
Hmm.
me,
Hmm.
because this kind of setup, we're not far from that structure, at least in the government, at least in our local, politicians or judges or whatever. We're not far from that setups right now. And the powers that be have the power to make sure that things run exactly how they want to. And as we progress, and progress is an interesting word right now, but as we move into this election cycle and the quiet parts are being said out loud and people are getting more and more violent and more angry, this is my fear,
Hmm.
that there will just be rampant violence based on an idea,
Hmm.
from far away, a visual marker, oh, they have a rainbow flag somewhere or whatever it may be. Like this is the way that I guess people are thinking because it has been done and it was the good old days.
Yeah.
That was when America was great.
Right.
It's terrifying. It's absolutely
Hmm.
terrifying. And you mentioned the Panther. I want to get back to that because it
Hmm.
is really interesting. I didn't know this, but there was a Democratic Party symbol, at least in
Hmm.
Alabama, but across the South, um, which was a white rooster,
Hmm.
um, that often had the phrase with it, white supremacy for the right,
Hmm.
which is why the Black Panther was so important as a symbol.
Yeah.
Um, because what? Like,
Yeah.
what?
I liked what they
Uh,
did with the Black Panther, or the reason why they chose a Black Panther is that they were saying, cats are peaceful animals until they're backed into a corner. And what happened here is that, Black people were backed into a corner, and had no
mhm,
other way to get out except to fight for their rights. That
mhm,
obviously with the protests and really in this grassroots organizing, they even had people coming from other states outside of the area to help with the protests. Something that I thought was really profound is that they were soliciting the help from MLK, and MLK was like, I don't even know what to do. I can't even help you
right,
guys, I mean,
right.
obviously in so many words. But they really were at this prefaces of creating a movement to survive well beyond the loss of their own lives, whether they lost their lives in the movement or just by natural cause. But they were really looking to affect the area in a really profound way. to last for generations. And we see that, we see how their grassroots effort has really paid off. So at the time, these white leaders were saying,
if
"Oh,
you are liking what you're hearing,
I grew up with
and
Black
I'm sure that
people,"
you do,
and I feel
I
like
really
that was
need your help.
the
If you could go and drop a 5-star rating on
1930s,
Spotify or
40s,
Apple
50s,
Podcasts
60s
or wherever you're
time,
listening
and
to the show,
before
would
that of
do
saying, "Oh,
us
well, I have Black
wonders. So
friends,"
please drop that in the
and it's
comments.
like, but
Drop
do
that
you
5-star rating.
like?
All right,
Do you
get
see
back to the
them? Do you
conversation.
understand them? Do you understand what they're going? So SNCC wouldn't even have been created without the help or the idea or inspirations of Ella Baker. For those who aren't familiar, sound like I'm from New York.
Those accents got you.
I don't know. For those who aren't familiar, Ella Baker, she served as the executive secretary for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. She organized a founding conference of SNCC for SNCC and which was held at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina during Easter weekend of 1960. She immediately recognized the potential of students involved in the sit-in movement and wanted to bring leaders of the movement together to meet one another to consider future work. Miss Baker, as the students usually called her, persuaded Martin Luther King to put up $800 needed to hold the conference. Reverend King hoped they would become an SCLC student wing. Ella Baker, however, encouraged the students to think about forming their own organization. So through the empowerment of students, that's how you got SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And so they mention Ella Baker a lot throughout, or a good amount, I would say, throughout the documentary, and referencing her methods and her teachings on how to really get the changes that they wanted.
Yeah, it's the leaders as they come through was also an interesting thing because they all came in with different approaches outside of each other, about how they were going to handle their activism, right? So some were more peaceful than others. Others kind of wanted to meet resistance with resistance. Others wanted to wait and try to unite a larger group, and other people wanted more immediate things. So it was interesting to see how people were working together. And I think the most inspirational piece of all of this was that people did work together. It did leave me with a question, or a couple questions actually. It's like, one, do I think that this kind of unified movement is possible right now without a major tragedy? Not really sure. Especially after 2020, it seems that tragedy is the thing, which is unfortunate. And then my other main question after this documentary is, what are the movements, what are the rights, what is the future that you're willing to die for? Because death is on the table and it's actively coming for you, so like, I don't have answers to those questions, but seeing how people approached, changed, worked, lived for this movement, I just wonder how that in a modern day context would work, if it could work. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's just open-ended.
I know that, we talk about the grassroots efforts that we see right now, and we know people are creating change. It just looks different. We're also in an age of there is so much information, and there are so many things going on. It's like, where do you focus your energies? Like, or like, how are we following up on the grassroots efforts that we support, or that we're part of? Like, how well are we doing that to stay in the know of how effective it has been? I know that there are a lot of different petitions that'll come through, or so many different organizations. I think maybe part of that is up to us to stay on top of what those organizations are doing and what change has come from it. I think it just looks different at this point as well, because sure, we have like certain big pieces of legislation that have been passed, like the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Act and everything. and what big do we need now to be passed to that
Mhm.
same degree. And it, pardon my ignorance if, there's something that I mean, out like sure we have the abortion ban, right? Like so we can fix some things like that, or that needs to be fixed. But I'm thinking of the um so maybe it's the overturning of the overturn of things like
Yeah.
the abortion legalization, or books that are banned and things like that. But it feels different to me than um, the rights of Black people. These
Mhm.
are like, you know what I'm saying?
It's a
Like that's
it's
kind of the,
larger.
yeah, like
Yeah.
the rights of Black people to me, or Black people, minorities seems larger, and these are all like branches of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So like we got to work on the branches, but we don't have that like
Yes.
big piece.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. And I think that's another thing that was coming up for me while watching the documentary, and kind of the reason why the questions that I'm left with popped up, or even that shame piece that I mentioned earlier about
Mm-hmm.
living my own life and just assuming that that is life, because I'm so deep into my intersections and what
Mm-hmm.
that means, that at large doesn't feel like there is an at large, because I feel personally, I feel othered, just being
Mm-hmm.
in the LGBTQIA, like that there's a division there. I'm thinking about Black women and how somehow Black women are thrown to the side. I'm thinking about Black trans women, like
Mm-hmm.
who are absolutely being murdered left and right. And that is for later, for
Mm-hmm.
some reason. I think you're right. I think that maybe it's a time thing. The movements have to be multiple and plentiful because of the amount of intersections that we have to observe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But and not like I really would love a more united something that works for most people. But again, I feel like I don't want to wish that, because it feels like that only happens after a massive tragedy, and there's just so much pain in that. And mm,
I don't know.
I can't even imagine.
It's hard to say what that's going to look like, or what it could look like. Talking about Lowndes County, they even had a pastor who was supporting, a white pastor who was supporting the movement, supporting everything that SNCC was doing. And they even killed him. One of
Mm-hmm.
the sheriffs did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wild because, they still go to trial, they do all these things. And someone's like, oh, well, like, or the sheriff that killed him is like, oh, well, he had a knife. And so it was self-defense. And even
Mm-hmm.
still, like, knowing that that's not true,
Yep.
the full white jury acquitted the sheriff. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, they hate the cause that much that they didn't care what happened to their own person.
To a
They
pastor.
Yeah, to a pastor, like,
They don't care.
um it's wild. It
Yeah.
is
And
absolutely
it's not
wild.
even it's this paper thin facade of this law and order thing. Like we're seeing it right now. The assumed Republican, of
Hmm.
course, Trump,
Yeah.
34 felonies, and now the law and order group are going out wearing t-shirts that are like, I would rather vote for a convicted felon than President Biden. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I thought that it was law and order though. So it's
Yeah.
not, because 5 minutes before he became a felon, all the worst things ever were in the hands of felons, right? So it's
Yeah.
not that. And even when religion is used, it's not, I'm not buying that it's religion anymore.
Hmm.
It's paper thin. It's protecting whiteness at all costs
Yeah.
and putting different languages around that to make that happen. And that court trial, that, oh, he had a gun shit, is the same as our dash cam didn't pick up anything. Their
Hmm.
spine broke in the back seat. We went over a pothole. Uh,
Hmm.
he rolled himself up in the mat
Yeah.
in his dead body. Like, it's
It's like
playing in our
law,
face.
order, religion, asterisks
Please. It's not
when
about
we
that.
approve. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not even about this the whole LGBTQIA people are groomers and abusers and all this kind of stuff. You don't care about groomers or abusers.
Yeah.
I know you don't.
Yeah.
It's in your home.
Mm-hmm.
It's your bestie. It's your
Mm-hmm.
preacher. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that. It's not that. And so it's it'll be interesting when that little facade, because it's like barely holding on. I feel like
Yeah.
it's gonna drop, especially if we get this new president.
Yeah.
And we'll see where we go from there. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. We're gonna be in a movement. We will. We have no choice. Just look at
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say right now because I'm tired, but I think we will, you
Yeah.
know?
I agree. There's going to be something that does come of this. I know that, election wise, we certainly don't want to see what it looks like is going to happen. Um, I don't want to discourage anyone from, exercising their right, especially when we have people just like Snick who, fought so hard for their own county and for their people, and how that really just kind of transcended across the US, and even transcended time into now, a lot of, again, those grassroots efforts. That's what people are doing. I think to some
Mhm.
degree, that's what we're trying to do through
In
the
a way.
interwebs, or through radio waves of the podcast. And we have to be able to continue that. I think that people are maybe like burnt out to some degree and try and like say, oh, it doesn't matter. And like, sure, maybe in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't actually matter, like in terms of life. But at the same time, like that doesn't mean you do nothing. That means
Right.
that because it is important to other people, and to people who you say that you care about, right?
The
And
people who are
so
coming after us.
exactly, right. So there's this video that I saw the other day, maybe it was yesterday. Um, Someone had mentioned, there are laws and legislation that are passed in certain areas, and that can affect you, but the community that you build will also affect you. And this is what we're doing. We're building community. We have our community with each other and then to our listeners. And that's also where we can affect change and have an impact and get, the fulfillment of the work that we do, or the energy and the time that's put into it. That's part of where that fulfillment is, even if it
Mhm.
doesn't resonate to the that we can immediately see to the bigger sort of picture of laws and legislation. But at least having these conversations can be like that trickle into the greater pond of America and the
Yeah.
laws that
And
we have
also
here.
just like keep telling the stories. Like it is
Hmm.
so important. That kind of ended the documentary on that note, just that these stories are important to tell for all the reasons that it is important for us to be thinking about it right now, and all the reasons why our own experiences must be shared, because otherwise it would be drowned out. It would be so pleasant if that didn't happen, if we didn't know about the unpleasantness of what it's like to be black,
Hmm.
like, oh wellsies, bitch, we got
Right.
microphones. Like we're
Right.
going to have to keep talking about it. We're going to have to keep moving forward as it is a movement. So
As we
um
say, if we don't tell our own story, someone else is going to tell it and remove the important parts. So,
okay.
yeah, people were moved so much by the movement of what was going on in Lowndes County that they were staying out in Selma because it was safer to stay there and then commute over to Lowndes County. And then eventually they're like, you know what, that's not sustainable. You shouldn't be on the highways because God knows what would happen. And so someone's dad had mentioned, they've got an empty house and they didn't owe anything, so they owned it. Like it was truly their land, it was their house. And it didn't have like the greatest condition or anything, but at the very least, that's a place that they could stay and be closer to the protests and closer to the work that needed to be done in Loudness. Um, there they protected themselves from the neighbors. Excuse me, they protected themselves as a collective, really. The neighbors, the people who they could trust, they were in on it as well. um, they had to have this sort of band built together because they didn't have the state government behind them, the local government, the federal government. Nobody was protecting them except themselves. And so Outside of that, they also built this sort of tent town where a lot of people were able to like camp out and they were just going to work through it. Were they shot at? Yes. Did they get shot? Yes, which is wild to believe that they, still
It's
stayed in this
insane.
place, but that's what they did and they had to. And they, sure did arm themselves as well to help, protect the people around and to continue to fight. So, um, it was really powerful to see that and also to see the chairman of SNCC, Stokely Carmichael. He's boots on the ground. Excuse me. He's boots on the ground. He's going door to door. He's really advocating for everything that they believe in and not afraid to have those tough conversations or to really put himself out there. And you just really saw that like across the board, everyone was in it. Like everyone was
Hmm.
really invested in what SNCC was doing.
Yeah, it got so bad that people
Yeah.
had to live in tents and point guns out of the tent just because they wanted
Hmm.
to have a say in where they lived. 80% of the town is Black, and they have to
Hmm.
hide in tents for safety
Hmm.
where they live.
Hmm.
I, yeah,
It's like a war zone. I mean, they said
it was.
America basically declared war on Southern freedom fighters, and that's what it was.
Even the language of fighter, like even the language of Black power, right, which is often debated as something that could be deemed aggressive or whatever because of the word power and fighter and all these different things. We're literally talking about regular everyday human rights. It's not why is it so violent? We're
Hmm.
talking about going to vote, to
Hmm.
have a say in how your community operates around you, which is
Hmm.
supposed to be the foundation of the country.
Hmm.
I think of that right now, and I'm going to keep bringing it back to queerness just because that's the world that I live in.
Hmm.
But the the fight for kids to be able to say, "I feel like this,"
Hmm.
the end, is a fight to the death for people
Hmm.
who aren't even having kids. Like
Yeah.
it's just ridiculous how blown up these things can get.
Hmm.
And I don't know, unfortunately it's just too poignant. Like I said, like it's just too one to one right now with what we're seeing in
Hmm.
the world. And luckily it's a little bit more spread out and a lot more people are activated and there's easier ways to communicate and we don't have to you know drive in the four activists in the world that have some
Yeah.
sort of voice. Like there's more power, there is more ability to get things done, but there's also just as strong of an effort to strip away everything that was worked for. Which
Hmm.
brings me to the thought that I lost earlier.
Good.
Voting.
Hmm.
um I know that there is so much debate about whether or not to vote, this upcoming election because of the genocide happening in Gaza under the
Yeah.
financing of America and under
Yeah.
the rule of President Biden. I am still one of those people, and maybe I'm still, maybe it's a millennial thing. Like I'm still touched by the boomers or something in that way, but I'm still going to be voting for the president when it comes time to, and whether it's an act of protection or not, uh, um, I still think that that's the right thing to do,
Hmm.
especially after seeing how many people literally died just so that I could walk into that booth and have something to say and have it be
Hmm.
recorded and have it count. I know there are geniuses that have way better, are steeped way deeper into the topic of, voting third party or not voting
Yeah.
and what that means and all that stuff. I am not there. I'm probably not going to get there. There's a sense of urgency that I'm feeling. Um, and I don't know, just sitting through this documentary and seeing all the things that happen in order to get the right, it again, maybe this is just the boomer that lives inside of me, but I feel like honoring that, and I feel like we need to be voting, because I know a certain
Yeah.
group of people who will never not vote.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I think what's tough about it is that, SNCC really, they did a ton of work. Like we cannot emphasize that enough, but part of their work, that they did was to create an independent party to vote for. So
Mhm.
they knew that they
Yeah,
weren't going to be
yeah.
able to get support, for, Republican, the candidates that they wanted to put up for Republican or, candidates that they could put up for Democrats, and they knew that wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to get the support from them, and so they created their independent party, being the Black Panther, that they wanted people to vote for. And so that's how they were listed, and that would be from like the school boards to tax
Mhm.
assessors to the coroners, et cetera. And then I believe their first primary was it wasn't successful, but they kept going, and then they were
Yeah.
able to make that change and really have some success. And at that time, again, Lowndes County being 80% Black, it makes sense as they continue their grassroots efforts. They're talking to Black people, they're getting everyone out to vote in the primaries, and to really like get the emphasis on, hey, we can get this done. And so then finally, in 1970, they have their first Black sheriff who was appointed, and so that worked. Like having that independent party worked. The problem
Yeah.
that I see now is that, and people will talk about it, and it sucks. We don't necessarily, like, we have a two-party majority system, and we do have
We just
independents
do.
that exist. But how do we get a collective, like truly a collective of people to vote independently that makes a big difference? Like, and we're not just talking about like, oh, they got, um, you know, thousands or hundreds of thousands of votes. We need millions. Like,
Yeah.
we would need
Yeah.
millions, across, at least particularly talking about the presidential race. Um, Something that, I don't know if I think I've talked to you about Mark Thompson. He's Reverend Mark Thompson. He's my cousin. He does a lot of work in this space since he was tiny, right? And is heavily involved in was heavily involved in the civil rights movement, and the after effects, and has these great ties with civil rights activists. And so, on his podcast, it's called Make It Plain. They talk about so many different pieces of the movement, and where everything is at. So Mark talks about on the podcast, or he mentioned, how during presidential elections you have a lot of people that come out to vote, and people have to recognize that it's not just about presidential elections. However, the majority of people in the US, especially, we're talking about white people, and you get people from rural areas coming out to vote, namely for the presidential elections.
Mhm.
And so then there's a bit more voting power in that sense. But the way that candidates are running is to, again, it's that other sort of sense. Like, so long as they don't have to be Black, then, and have to think that, they're poor, but you're Black and poor, and it's worse to be Black and poor. So poor white people are going to be like, well, shoot, so long as I don't have to be them. And that's how they really pit each other, pit people against each other, even if they're in the same sort of economical class or same situation. They're like, oh, but you are not Black, or
Oh yeah.
that's the line for them, which
Oh
we
yeah.
definitely saw in the documentary about Lowndes County as well. Or in that, again, I'll post it in the show notes, and I've sent it to you, the video of the woman talking about white women grappling with their whiteness, is like, okay, well, so long as I still have that, and I don't have to be this other um, race, as they act, and they really express is like they don't outright say it, but that's the underlying message behind it. And so yeah, you get a lot of people that are going to come out and vote and unfortunately vote for this man. Whereas we need more of us or more people in that independent space for a viable candidate and a viable number of people to come out and vote to make a truly a difference. It's just
Yeah.
unfortunately where we're at, there's not that big, like, is it being that impactful, which sucks,
No, and
which
honestly, it
sucks.
just takes so much money to even get to your voice amplified enough to connect to people,
Yeah.
you know? Like it takes so much money, it takes so much history. You have to have a name, you have to have so much in place. And there's just an urgency right now when it comes to these elections. You know, we're hearing about Project
Mm,
2025 and
it's
just all these
ugh, yeah.
things that I do think that we should. I don't like that it's bipartisan. I am not a
Mm-hmm.
fan of the actions of our government. I'm not a fan
Mm-hmm.
of who's in our government. We did this already in 2020. Um, but again, the urgency is here, and we know that the third party candidate will not win. So I'm sure somebody who's listening to this who is constantly thinking about that third party or not voting is like,
Mm-hmm.
you're missing this point. I am absolutely missing the point. I am absolutely missing the point of, what the protests would do, what the timetable could look like. I'm missing the point. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to vote
Mm-hmm.
because I'm scared.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that's not a great motivation, but that is just what it is. That is just
Mm-hmm.
what it is. Yeah. There's got to be something more positive to end the show on besides we're voting out of fear and I wish more people would vote nice and scared like me. um,
Yeah.
it's just a little too real. There are people who are actively living that have been through this
Mm-hmm.
firsthand. It's not
Even the
a
documentary, this was made in 2022.
hello.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the white women. I'm wondering when healthcare for women will become actually important,
Mm-hmm.
or is it really about thoughts on people of color, women of color, and their access to these different services, or what is it? What is it really?
Right.
Because like white ladies, your rights are getting stripped away too.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see it. Like it's wild. Anyway,
Mm.
let's think of something more positive to end,
I
if
know.
possible.
There's this question that they posed. What does it mean to be free? We thought freedom meant to live like white people. We didn't realize what it meant to integrate into a burning house.
Oh
That's
my
not
God.
positive. It
That
just was
quote.
powerful.
Oh, that quote was amazing.
Um,
Yeah.
what do you think the founders of SNCC would think of where we're at right now
Um, like you mean at large or you and I?
at large?
Um, I think they'd be very proud of the universities that have taken action to hold their institutions accountable for their participation in the genocide in Gaza.
Mm, mm,
Um, I think that they would be proud to see that their work has lived on and moved out of just students into the hands of people who are in government and able to make moves. I'm so grateful for all these people. I'm grateful for the everyday Joes who ended up working as clerks in different offices and stuff. I'm grateful for the people who said, "Oh yeah, no, we should be able to do that. Why can't we?"
mm-hmm.
Stokely Carmichael at the end was saying, you didn't think that you could be a sheriff. You thought that being
Right.
a sheriff was for white people. You can be a sheriff. You I'm thankful for people who remind people of their humanity
Yeah.
that is often so often stripped away. So I think that they would be proud. I think they would be heavily activated
Mm,
and working overtime to drill, and I don't know what it would be, but drill something into the
Yeah.
heads of people who are leaning more into apathy than ever before.
Yeah. And I hope
Yeah.
that everyone listening, let this be like a sign or, a message to continue what you're doing, even as small or big or anything in between, like everything counts.
Yeah. Just
Everything
move.
helps. Yeah. Yeah.
Just
You don't
move.
have to be the fastest. You don't have to be, the most groundbreaking or, really set records. It's just like you said,
Can't
just keep
be.
moving.
Yeah. Yeah. And watch this documentary. Just
Yes.
watch this documentary because it's so well done. I'm like,
Yeah.
I just watched it. It is a lot. It's a lot to chew on. I want to watch it
Mhm.
again. It
Yeah.
was so well done.
See what more you
So
can take from
bravo,
it. Absolutely.
man. Bravo to everybody who put it together. Thank you for bringing it to my attention because I wouldn't have even, I would have never known. So this was really interesting. And of course, food for thought, a
Mhm.
banquet.
And now you know.
And now you know.